It is Friday, May 20th. Let's talk PlayStation. Hello everyone, welcome back. We've actually got a decent amount of stuff to go over from this past week. So first up, as always, our PS Plus reminder. The May games are still available, so go ahead and claim those, get that done. And for our first story, the big thing, of course, this past week was on Monday when Sony finally confirmed some details about the PlayStation Plus relaunch on the PlayStation blog, where they talked about, a small little look into the PS4 and PS5 catalog, the classic games catalog, also some features for those classic games. We talked about all that on Monday in a separate video, so no need to talk about that here, but we do have one very recent development, which is that over on Twitter, Ben Studio confirmed that Syphon Filter will have trophies. In fact, it'll also have a full Platinum trophy list, which is awesome, but I am... Obviously, I'm shocked, right? I'm very, very surprised. You all know that on separate occasions I've said, and most recently I've warned, hey, don't expect trophies for those classic games for reasons X, Y, and Z, which namely, there was a lot of things working against this, which was, the patent that Sony filed. Everyone keeps bringing that up, but it's an old patent. It's what they use on the PS2 games on PS4 during that program in 2016, but that was a very short-lived program, so there's not that many games. Also, it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 months per game to be added for each game to get trophy support, rather I should say. And also, yes, Sony has a mandate, but they can easily remove their own mandate in the interest of getting more games onto the service, which that's what I thought was going to happen. But now we have this, which, don't get me wrong, I am very happy. I want it to be wrong about this whole thing, but now I'm just so curious as to why they did not outline this on the PlayStation blog next to save states, honoring purchases, the rewind feature. It's all very strange, especially when Sony was already very careful with their wording, saying that, oh, some games will do this, some games will do that, and we still assume that all games will support all these features, but they do want to be very careful about outlining the difference between, say, the PS3 streaming, the classic games remastered catalog, which still includes those PS2 titles from PS4, and now the PS1 and PSP stuff. I assume that's what they were doing there, but I still don't really understand why they wouldn't say that some games will have trophies. So, if anything, I'm starting to think that this is likely going to be a case-by-case basis. Ben Studio is a first-party developer, so perhaps they wanted to go about adding trophies to this game in the same manner that we've seen with the PS2 stuff on PS4, and that's not going to be the case for every game. Or perhaps they are, in fact, still mandating trophies, which is kind of cool, but as I've said, the problem with that is that you're going to severely slow down the rollout on those games in the first place, right? And the only thing that struck me odd about the PlayStation blog post on Monday is that, yes, it was an example list, so it was not the full lineup, but it was very weird to see that they showed a lot of titles for PS4 and PS5 in that catalog, but the classic games example list was only 9 or 10 games, very small, so perhaps they only showed a little bit because the full lineup is a smaller list. I don't know, because the thing is, again, trophies would severely slow down the rollout of getting these games out in a timely manner unless they somehow updated the pipeline in general to make it easier to add trophies. We don't know, but that's my speculation right now, at least. I'm still a bit iffy on if every game will have it. I would assume no, but we will have our answer very soon, of course. Now, while we're talking about the PS Plus relaunch, we can also mention very briefly that for Bloober team, they signed some sort of agreement back in April of this year for, they signed it with SIE to distribute select Bloober team titles on a distribution service or platform, which we would assume is PlayStation Plus. So that means we could possibly see some Bloober team titles on PS Plus Extra, which is that one tier above Essential, and that could include things like both Layers of Fear, the Blair Witch game, Observer, and also The Medium, of course, their most recent title. And that seems likely. Of course, Sony's going to be inking a lot of deals for getting games on that PS Plus Extra category, and it looks like Bloober team games might be one of them. Now, this is more of a PSA, but if you remember at the start of this year where Sony announced and also released new PS5 console covers, at the time at least it was only the Midnight Black and Cosmic Red, but they did showcase all the colors. It's just that we had to wait until summer for the remaining 3, and now pre-orders for that have gone live, so you can actually pre-order the Nova Pink, Galactic Purple, or Starlight Blue PlayStation 5 console covers. So just a quick PSA, that's finally out there, and they should get to you by June 17th. That's the launch day. Also on PlayStation Direct, there's now finally a listing for a PS5 Horizon Forbidden West console bundle, both disc and digital. We actually saw this bundle 1 or 2 weeks ago in the UK, and it sold out immediately, obviously, but that bundle did represent a £20 savings if you were to buy them together instead of separately, because this was a proper PS5 bundle from Sony, not quite a soft retailer bundle where they just ship a regular console with a bunch of games, controllers, accessories, and that gets up to like $800 something, but it's all still MSRP if you were to buy it separately. That's very common, of course. We're familiar with that, but this is a true PS5 bundle from Sony. The second one, I believe, the first one was Ratchet and Clank, but now it's on PS Direct. So if a wave of invites goes out and you're in, you might have the chance to buy one of these and save some money if you were to just buy a normal console in the game separately. Moving on to our next story, we've got a very interesting situation going on in Japan when it comes to console sales, where PS5 was outsold by Xbox for the first time in years. We're talking a decade, maybe a bit longer, but it's been a long time. And PS5 was outsold for the week ending May 15th in Japan, where Sony sold about 2,600 PS5s, both disc and digital, and Microsoft moved about 6,200 Series S and X units, and that was primarily Series S. I think X they only did like a few hundred, which is not a lot at all, but big difference there. And just to really illustrate how bad the stock situation is for Sony, at least in that given week, they normally do anywhere from 15,000 to 2,000, or not 2,000, 15,000 to 25,000 for any given week in Japan, which, at least in terms of what they've been doing and shipping there, you can see how this week was like almost nothing. And that's how Microsoft was able to move some units more than Sony. And as we've seen over the years, I mean, it's not like the territory is completely like lost on Microsoft, but it's something where they do what they can. And for this generation, they've actually made the most ground they ever have in that market. So I'm sure they're pleased with the amount of progress they are making, but even still, it's something where generally, when it comes to Sony versus Microsoft, it's kind of a gimme for Sony. As long as they can make enough and they're there in stores, they'll probably do more. But yeah, we finally had a multi-year streak break. For our next story, we've seen in the past 3-4 years that Sony's made a pretty big push in the accessibility space for their first-party games, and recently over on the PS blog, Santa Monica Studio detailed the accessibility options that will be available in God of War Ragnarok, to which there is a lot of toggles and settings that you can use to really make the game that much more accessible to you. Things like colored subtitles, XL subtitles, various text and icon size options, there's UI customizations, controller remapping, high contrast mode, audio cues for interactive objects, a navigation assist, and a lot more. In total, there's more than 60 ways to adjust the gameplay to your liking, and this is, it's really great to see, right? It's what we've said before. Between Sony, Microsoft, and a lot of other publishers and developers, it's great to see them lowering the barrier and offering all these specific toggles and modifiers to really fine-tune the experience to whatever sort of visual impairment or whatever sort of ailment that really is keeping you from playing and finishing a lot of these games. It's not necessarily difficulty settings that aren't really, they're not always a one-size-fits-all. It's these very unique modifiers that go a long way. So to see this trend continue is awesome. Moving on to some Naughty Dog news, or I should say a Naughty Dog rumor here, because this game technically still is not confirmed to exist at all, but it is more of an open secret that we're getting a Last of Us remake on PS5. And so recently on the Kind of Funny Games cast, GamesBeat reporter Jeff Grubb mentioned that he's heard and that he keeps hearing this game is due to release this year. So it's not going to be a 2023 game. It's going to come out by this holiday season. And the rationale behind that, of course, is that Naughty Dog has had a lot of staff kind of sitting around waiting to do something after shipping Part 2. And of course, they're a big team, right? So there's a portion of staff working on the multiplayer project, also concepting and pre-production for the next major production at the studio, but also a team doing the remake on PlayStation 5. So they've got a lot of stuff going on, and it's not necessarily something where they have to save this for releasing it next to the TV show, as long as it's ready and done on time, and by the time the show comes out, then that's how they want to go about doing it. And because this game also does not have a formal reveal just yet, by the time we do hear it, I mean, it's got to be something where they show a full-blown very in-depth gameplay trailer. They show a lot of the game, and also they attach a release date to it immediately saying, hey, here's this brand new announcement, and this game's coming out in the next 4 or 5 months or something like that. That's likely what we'll see. Now, of course, there's more projects that we're still waiting to hear about. Namely, that would be Final Fantasy XVI and also Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. And, well, it's very much a Square Enix thing to announce that there will be news later. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what we have here. Right now, Tetsuya Nomura recently during a live stream for that FF7 mobile spin-off game, he mentioned that for the 25th anniversary for Final Fantasy VII, that there's going to be more teasing and announcements. Just they're going to say something, which, it would be nice to have, at the very minimum, some sort of formal reveal or tease for FF7 Remake Part 2. Doesn't guarantee it, because right now for that particular game and the franchise, they're doing so much with it, so it could be a bunch of other, totally boring stuff. But it seems like a Remake Part 2 announcement should be soon, you would think. And also for Final Fantasy XVI, which we've discussed recently, during during Square Enix financial earnings report, earnings call, they mentioned that there's going to be more announcements either this month or next month. And, well, of course, we know the trailer for FF16 is pretty much done and ready to go, and they do have high hopes for that release in particular. Now, this is also a good segue to our next story, which is about possibly Sony having an event the first week of June, which is very close to that E3 timeframe, as many are now calling it. This comes from, again, GamesBeat reporter Jeff Grubb, and he does not confirm this at all, but it's just something where he mentions he's heard about it. They could have an event, but they could also not have an event. As we've seen with Sony, they are very tight-lipped on any sort of leaks getting out. It's no guarantee whatsoever, and Jeff has outlined plenty of times that if he doesn't publish a story on GamesBeat, he doesn't really have enough to back it, and I believe him. I mean, for me, my running theory was we would get a PSVR 2-focused event in March, which did not happen, and then we would get the typical PlayStation showcase in September, which is really only what we've only seen that the past 2 years, because historically we can't look at Sony anymore because they kind of do whatever they want, right? They don't go to E3 anymore. And so I still kind of expect that it'll only be a September showcase. I would like to be wrong, though. It'd be nice to have an upcoming showcase within the next 3-4 weeks, which, mind you, Sony has plenty of things to talk about. I mean, there's actually a fair amount of first-party devs now where we don't know what they're doing at all, and that's a very exciting prospect, but it doesn't really guarantee that we will have a show. So for the time being, at least, I would not get I wouldn't get hopes up right now. And to be honest, that's always sound advice when looking at things like this. Now, I'm sure a lot of you probably saw this because it was one of the bigger stories from this past week. It's, of course, the Silent Hill rumor. A lot happened in such a short amount of time. So much so that it's kind of hard to keep up with, so I'll try and do a very rough synopsis of what happened, and this won't be everything, but here's more or less what went down. So over on Twitter and Recent Era, Dusk Golem shared a bunch of images of an alleged Silent Hill project. They claim it's a joint production, and Masahiro Ito is 100% involved, and also Sony is involved in some way, but there's also multiple projects being developed. 3.5 apparently. What that half is, we don't know. A smaller scale teaser or a VR game, something like that, you would assume. But at this point, people are starting to connect the dots on tweets that Masahiro Ito sent out over the years, like this one mentioning cherry blossom trees, which directly ties to one of the leaked images. Then Dusk Golem had the images DMCA'd on Twitter, adding some authenticity to the whole ordeal. Then, during GamesBeat Decides, reporter Jeff Grubb mentions he's heard, but cannot confirm, that Bloober team is handling a remake of Silent Hill 2. Nate the Hate and then VGC corroborated this, Silent Hill 2 being remade by Bloober team with PlayStation-timed exclusivity. VGC also adds that multiple games are indeed on the way, one being a smaller episodic series of short stories, and that Annapurna Interactive may be involved in that one. And then a new mainline entry is also on the way, though it's unclear who is working on that. The leaked images were apparently from a PT-style teaser game, and, well, of course, as we've discussed in prior videos, a Silent Hill revival has been rumored for a while, with Dusk Golem, Rely on Horror, Gamatsu, and VGC all claiming this since 2020 and throughout 2021, which is why we've been watching this for a while, because, I've mentioned it's like, you can pick up on when certain rumors they seem believable and which ones are totally BS. You shouldn't pay attention to them. When you have this many different sites, places, sources, all without direct connections, all saying something principally similar, right? It's like, okay, something's definitely happening, but it's a matter of once we see it, how truthful is everything being connected together. And so hearing that there was possible Sony involvement, that's why we've watched this rumor in particular. And, well, this doesn't really inspire much hope, I would say. And I think you all know I try to be generally I'm a very positive person on all topics in the games business. Try to be a glass half full kind of guy, but the thing is, I wouldn't give Bloober this project if it were my decision. It's not like Bloober's awful, but their games are very hit or miss, and generally they're more miss than hit, I guess, to put it lightly. But for such a highly regarded entry in the series, really that's 1, 2, and 3, 2 for a lot of people, to give them, Silent Hill 2 to remake, I don't know. And the thing is, maybe Sony is involved to the point where they're actually helping, which that I would be okay with, assuming they can really oversee and help the project in a big way. It doesn't have to be something where they just money hatted the project to get timed exclusivity. It could be more of a mutual agreement of, we'll help get the project off the ground, and in exchange we also want 1, 2 years timed exclusivity, whatever the case may be. It could be that. We could also see Sony working on the other projects as well, because there's still an unknown developer or unknown joint production going on with this mainline series. Like, there's still, despite how much we heard about within like a 24-hour period, there's still a lot of really fuzzy details. So at least for right now, what we're hearing, not great, but again, we will see over time. Next up, let's talk about some PlayStation productions. This time, the Twisted Metal TV series. We have a small update here. Deadline is reporting that more roles have been filled. Stephanie Beatriz will play as a car thief named Quiet, and then Thomas Hayden Church will play as Agent Stone. And both these roles, of course, are next to Anthony Mackie playing the main star, John Doe. And, well, that's all we have so far. I'm still highly skeptical of a Twisted Metal TV series, but it's an action comedy, so we'll see how that pans out. And we also have kind of a big update for the HBO series of The Last of Us, where we have some set photos come out for not only just more general, like generic areas of Calgary where it's just outside environments, but we've also got set photos from the Firefly Hospital. And they look really good, very convincing. I mean, all the set photos have looked really good. We only cover them every so often because there's actually been a ton of them that have been released over the past 4 or 5 months or whatever. But the Firefly Hospital, that's a big one. And definitely more excited for this versus Twisted Metal. But either way, at least as we've seen with Uncharted, they are putting a lot of money and resources and talent into this. And hopefully that translates into quality television. Moving on to Sony's corporate strategy meeting, where the Sony Group CEO, Kenichiro Yoshida, was presenting, and there wasn't really anything too revealing here, this time around at least. We can mention that Sony did talk about the Metaverse for a bit, which, most companies nowadays are going to be talking about the Metaverse in some way and how they're trying to be positioned for what is meant to be a growth vector in that space. So for Sony, they talked about how they were well positioned with Sony Pictures, Sony Music, and also PlayStation itself, right? So the example that Yoshida mentioned was Fortnite and how they were running live events in Fortnite. Of course, we're going to see Sony talk more and more about the Metaverse over time, so whether you like it or not, we're going to hear more of that. But what was perhaps most noteworthy was when Yoshida talked about the Bungie acquisition and how that acquisition represents becoming more multi-platform. That, and also more PC releases, how they intend to roll out more games and try to reach as many people as possible on storefronts like Steam and the Epic Games Store. And this isn't really new info per se. That's why it's kind of big, but not really. I mean, we know they're doing more PC releases. they've actually put out a lot of new job listings for their PC team that they're building to release more PlayStation back catalog of games, and I would also assume possibly day and date with those live service games. That would be the one area where I see them finally start doing that, but at least for the time being, right? But we know that. We saw with the Bungie acquisition, they outlined immediately they're going to be an independent subsidiary underneath SIE. They're going to keep doing, they're going to publish games on all platforms, and they want the talent and expertise to work on more live service games that Sony is working on right now, right? So there's not any new information here per se, but as we've said, when it comes to the console space, there's a really there is a ceiling with just how many users you can reach and how many customers you can sell to until you have to start looking a little bit outside that box, right? So again, Microsoft got there a lot quicker, but Sony will eventually do it in their own way, and that's why if they do go down the route of acquiring a major publisher like say Square Enix or Sega or whatever else, right? I think it would be more in line with what we saw with Bungie, where I think they would actually allow that publisher to remain largely independent and publish on all platforms, and just they'll do the ongoing deals that they otherwise would have had without them being acquired, right? So if it was Square, we'd probably see Final Fantasy likely remain, exclusive at that point forward, but they'd still ship on Switch and Xbox as they see fit or whatever. That's just me speculating, but I assume that's how they'd go about doing it. But that is one way to start reaching a lot more customers outside of just strictly PlayStation hardware. Now, with all that said, it is time for Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter, and if you would like to win a $10 PSN code, it's very easy. You can follow the link down below. Supporting this channel, a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week because I'm trying to help pay for your games. Those are all the stories that I wanted to talk about you all from this past week, and this time around we had a slightly different schedule. So on Monday we covered the PS Plus relaunch details on the PS blog. If you want to find out everything, go check out that video. On Wednesday though, we did a PS Plus kind of a retrospective look back on the very first month and year of PS Plus on PS3 and comparing that to what it is today on PS5. So very interesting difference there. Go check it out. And coming up, the PS Plus relaunch in Asia markets on May 24th. So that's likely what we're going to do, depending on what we can and cannot see or interact with on that service, but I imagine we'll be okay. And until then, that's it. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday. Still available. Make sure you go ahead and grab those. And, of course, the major news this week was the PlayStation Plus relaunch. Oh, man. I told my buddy to start playing Bugsnax because it just launched on Xbox, and so he's finally playing it, and he just mentioned how Philbo got attacked by a bunger, which is like the first 5 minutes of the game. That made me happy.